Welcome back to another reading and correcting with me, Kindar, the Tiger Writes, and Ty, the Tiger Supervisor. These are where I read my text and make correction as I go along. If you are interested in listening to these live, it's every Tuesday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Time on Twitch. And today, we are doing chapter 35 of Shattered Salvation. The laser torch was so bright Catherine had to shield her eyes as she approached. "Almost done, ma'am," the man said as the torched. I'm amused that these got past the editor. The man said as the torch inched closer to the door. "Ma'am?" Catherine wasn't that old. She looked at the young man cutting the opening. Why do you want this change? Cutting the very young man. Children, really, already looking to escape the law. That's who she'd had to contend with when replacing the people she'd lost. It was depressing. She looked at the other young recruit, a clean-cut woman with an earpiece looking at her datapad, typing one-handed. "What's it look like?" "The electrical poles struck down, they're jamming. I got an upgrade recently, but It got an upgrade recently, but it was slapped over an existing system. So at its core, this is still just a cruise ship. It isn't giving me any trouble." "Have you found the cells?" She looked up at her. "This is a cruise ship, ma'am. They don't have cells, but I'm seeing a few rooms that have been hard locked. If they're going to convert something into a cell, that would be it." "Where are they?" "Spread around." She paused as she typed. 8 rooms on this level, 1 room 2 levels below us towards the back of the ship. Engineering is clearly in hard lock mode, as is the bridge. The other rooms are, we'll start with this level. If he isn't here, we'll move on to the next closest, and so on. The girl, how old was she? She couldn't be more than 25. She nodded and typed again. "If we split up, let's say 3 to a room, not taking into account the bridge and engineering, we could cover most rooms I'm seeing here." "Miss?" "Kopernik, ma'am. It's boss when we're on a job. And let them get all in the habit of calling her that the rest of the time, like the others, so she wouldn't stop feeling so damn old. And Kopernik, splitting up the team is the best way to ensure we all end up dead." "Boss?" There was There's almost 40 of us. She looked around, Catherine, at the rest of the now cramped ship. "We could force our way into a small corporation. What's going on in an old cruiser that can give us a problem?" "A one person." The young woman looked around Catherine again, and this time she turned to look at the assembled men and women. The 7 of our original team were in the back, serious and ready. The 30 others, far too young, looked hard at looking as tough and worked hard at looking as tough and failed miserably. "We are after one person," she repeated. "One male Somalian who made his way through one of the more secure corporations from the ground floor to the president's office, then made his way back down and vanished from the universe." She looked them over as they fidgeted. "I repeat, one man. So consider that before any of you decides to wander off on your own." She gave them time for the enormity of it to sink in. "Also, we don't know who else is on this ship, but they are clearly trained since they captured him. So I want you to shoot anyone we encounter. Don't ask if they're friendlies. Don't look to take prisoners. Take them down hard before they can do the same to you. Except Tristan," Emberlin said. "He's mine. If any one of you touches him, I'm going to disassemble you." She looked at the Porphyrian. Since his boyfriend's death, his temperament had become darker. Every day he hadn't enacted his revenge. She looked at the Porphyrian. Since his boyfriend's death, his temperament had become darker. Had darkened. Every day he hadn't enacted his revenge. She'd had to break up fight before it started between him and Brad because the pilot wouldn't just rush at the ship. At least soon he'd have what he wanted, what they both wanted. Stay focused, Ermelin. We are not your enemy. He gave her a smile that did nothing to reassure her. Not long ago, and he'd been busy hunting. Not long now. How did I see ago? Not long now, and he'd be busy hunting. The clang of the metal hull hitting the metal floor announced the start of the job. She stepped through and onto the ship. She didn't pause to take in the fresher air or admire the color scheme. She looked at Kopernik, who pointed. She headed in that direction. Catherine still couldn't believe how easy it had been to find this ship. They hadn't even bothered trying to hide their propulsion trail. Within a few hours of getting into space, it had been on their sensors. If she'd had the armament, she could have blown it up at a distance, but that had never been part of her plan. She needed to be certain Tristan died, and that meant doing it in person. They encountered a handful of men who died before they realized it. Each time, it was a volley of blasts that took one out, but she didn't hear the cheer she expected from the young mercenaries. At least they knew to conduct themselves professionally. They opened two of the doors Kopernik indicated before reaching the one Catherine knew would contain her prize. One had only been storage for an exorbitant amount of fabricator-based material, but this one had four men trying to break the door open, had they they had been before they were shut. This was where they hold up. They'd hold up. Why else would anyone be this determined to get the door open? Kopernik stepped around, opened the cover, and connected her datapad to it. She typed, frowned, spoke. Problem? A coercionist locked the door to keep anyone from getting in. Catherine looked at the bodies on the floor and didn't comment on the obviousness of what the young woman said. Can you get through? Yes. She studied the screen. It's an okay job. Alex, you said his name was, right? He looks to be good. She smiled, but I'm better. While she worked, Catherine had people take position in front of the door, ready to shoot at anyone there. The door opened and they fired. When they stopped, there was a perplexed look on their face. Catherine looked in. Four men were inside. Three had rifles pointed at them but didn't fire. Force field, Curly said, looking in with her. Sorry, Kopernik said, typing fiercely. That's in a different section. I didn't know it was up. She pursed her left. It's going to take longer. Catherine studied the men, mercenaries, in various types of gray armor. They were covered in blood, a lot of it. One of them, it had flowed down as if someone had dumped it on his head. She looked around them, and the amount of blood on the floor. Where were the bodies? At least one person had to have bled out. Behind the crates? The room was a medical bay, but it was being used for storage. Considering the number of crates and machines in it. She didn't see Tristan, and considering those men were alive, she doubted he'd be in there. The field's about to drop, Kopernik said, as Catherine was going to tell her to forget it. Well, if it was going to happen. Kill them. She stepped out of the way. Now. The guns flashed, and one of the recruits staggered back. When the shooting stopped, the woman next to him checked him out. Catherine entered the medical bay. Armelin walked around her and stalked the room. She moved slower, trying to determine why Alex had locked this room. She walked around the machine in the center, which looked more like the kind of art installation. She stopped that chain of thought. She couldn't afford the distraction. She noticed the woman as one of the recruits pointed his gun at her. Stop! To his credit, the man didn't fire. He looked at her. You said to shoot everyone. She'd have a talk with him after this about shooting someone who was tied up. I know, but give me a moment with this one. She crouched, and the woman tried to back away. I'm not with them. She looked around and sounded scared. Catherine thought she looked familiar. She might have been with the crew that ran the drug lab. Flint had shown her pictures, but Catherine hadn't paid attention. What are you doing here? I don't know. They just grabbed me and took me here. Catherine sighed. Try again. No one grabs someone for no reason. She calmed down a little. I swear, I don't know. Fine, shoot her. Wait! I copied the memory from the fabricator we stole. I don't know what it is, but the guy who owns the ship wants it pretty bad. That's better. What does he want with Tristan? The woman looked at her, confused. Somalian? No recognition. Fur, black muzzle, ears on top of his head? She shuddered. I don't know him, but or why he's here. The two of them were prisoners, I think. They escaped, but were recaptured. They tortured the human one. Alex. Okay, Alex. They tortured him. I think they escaped again because they came here, tied me, and patched each other up. They tied you? That didn't sound like Tristan. She nodded. I think the alien, Tristan, he wanted to kill me, but Alex convinced him he wasn't worth it. I wasn't worth it. She lowered his voice. He saved my life. Catherine raised an eyebrow. Why would he do that? The woman licked her lip. I tried to help him when he was tortured, but he was in bad shape. I'm not a doctor. She nodded. Alex did have something that resembled morals. He would feel like he owed this woman, and protecting her from Tristan would count. Why Tristan had listened, she didn't know. As best as she'd worked out, the dynamic was that Tristan was in charge, but there were no details in the files about how they worked together. So maybe the partnership wasn't as one-sided as she thought. Where are they now? I don't know. They didn't say. They are they are pretty pissed at the guy who owns the ship, so I'd have to, if I had to guess, I'd say they're going after him. That's who brought Tristan here? Some of his men, yes. And you don't know why? The woman shook her head. Who is he? The guy who owns this ship. His name is Baran. That's about all I know. Oh, and he hates mercs. What do you mean? He had mercs. He has. He has mercs working for him. Yes, but he doesn't like them. They're just what he could get. I overheard I overheard him grumbling about how much better the universe is going to be when all mercs are gone. Right, just what she needed. Another loony who thought mercs didn't have a place in the system that was space gov. It seemed like every year one of them popped up. The closest she'd come to capturing Tristan until now was because of such a man. The thing you have that he wants, did you give it to him? The woman looked away, then forced herself to meet Catherine's gaze. She shook her head. She'd given it to him. I'd probably handed it over the moment he asked to avoid suffering. Catherine understood the impulse. After all, this woman wasn't a hardened mercenary or security expert. She downloaded the information, not knowing what it was. When Tristan destroyed the fabricator, this Baran had been left with no choice but to take her, because the stupid girl hadn't put that on a chip. No, she'd probably had an upgrade of some sort, and that's where she'd stored it. A life of crime in an easy city hadn't prepared her for any of this. Catherine stood and turned. Wait, you can't leave me here like this. You're safer here. Trust me. Can you at least untie me? No. She looked around. Only 3 of the recruits had come in. There wasn't enough space here with all the crates for everyone. Armlin was in the hall before the doorway, looking at the floor and the corridor, not happy. Kopernik, you stay here. This is a secure place. This is as secure a place as you can wish for. Bring the force field back up once we're gone. You, she addressed the recruit who had almost shot the prisoner, Frederick, right? Friday, boss, Mark Friday. Friday, stay with Kopernik. You're her security detail. And her. The man indicated the tied woman. Catherine looked at her again. She was trying hard to look innocent. Too hard. I leave it to your discretion if you untie her or not, she faced the man. But she is not to be touched. You are not going to do a damn thing to her. Is that understood? I don't know what crime you committed that made you want to get off Bramolian 6 so badly, but I will not tolerate the needless violence. Especially not against someone who has nothing to do with this. Understood? You disobey me on that, and I'm not going to space you. I'm going to castrate you. The man nodded eagerly, and Catherine left him with Kopernik, motioning for the others to follow her. She stopped next to Amerlin. I don't have enough information, he grumbled under his breath as he paced. What can you tell me? They went that way. He indicated her right. You can see Tristan and Alex's bloody prints on the floor, but they vanish after a dozen steps. I don't know enough to see where they went after that. The prisoner says they were captured by the ship's owner. Emerald nodded. They didn't come willingly or consciously, he calmed. Tristan has a history of extracting revenge on anyone who seeks to imprison him. If the owner is responsible, then he would be Tristan's next logical target. She smiled. Good. Then that's where we're going. We either find Tristan there or this Baron, and make Tristan come to us. Either way, this ends here. This concludes chapter 35 of Shattered Salvation. If you are enjoying this, please leave a like. If you want to know when the next one's going to be, subscribe and hit the bell. If you want to read the book as well as the others in the series, they are available on all major e-retailer. If you want to support me, that's on my Patreon, where you can also get access to basically everything I've written. And if you want to listen to these live, it's every Tuesday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Time on Twitch. Links are in the notes, and with that, I shall wish you a good day.